Assalamu alaikum. Welcome everybody. I can see some faces I know, so I think some of you are from this ministry or we've interacted before at your university. Some of you are very new to this ministry, so I'm going to take a bit of an opportunity to explain to you where we're sitting, what of course this discussion is about, who we have here, an all-woman panel, which is exciting, and what you can expect, although it's up to you to make this discussion really interesting. So let me just start off with the beginning. Of course, you're in the Ministry of Housing and Urban Planning. This urban planning sector is something which is very new, we all know. It was added to this ministry in 2020, and the team who has organized this is the team that's working on the urban planning. This team is working on a capacity building program which is at the national level, and the idea is that we upskill fresh graduates to existing, let's say senior experts and young Omanis working in the field of urban planning. As we know in Oman, it's quite an exclusive career path, and we've all been brought up saying study engineering, because if you have engineering in your CV, then you're likely to get a job. Well, things are changing. Urban planning is a sector now, and if you do well, if you speak up, and if you're interested, the Ministry of Housing and Urban Planning is always open for collaboration with you. I am not even going to attempt to introduce the ladies. I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves, but before I do, I think I'd just like to set the scene a little bit on why we're here and what we're doing. Of course, Duktora Aliyah and Leyla al-Hadhrami are very much our own. We've heard them and we've seen them many, many times, and we really appreciate them taking time out. We have a guest today, which is really very special. We have Dr. Bowman from the University of Arizona. She is a lawyer and she's a professor at the School of Law. Further introductions I will give to her. But she's also very much interested in, let's say, the theme of smart cities, resiliency and sustainability and so on. Of course, we know Leyla. As I always say, she's the mother of smart cities in Oman. If you think about smart cities, it's almost remember her. And if you don't, then please check her out. And of course, Dr. Aliyah, who we know in the University of Architecture at Qابوس University, who's also become very, very famous recently with the Arab Award because she was on the panel of it and so on. What we're here to discuss is really to break down the term of smart cities. We hear so much in the news about smart cities, about climate change, about resiliency. Is smart cities really all about technology? Is smart cities about more things than others? What do we need in order to really achieve a smart city? So this is, in a nutshell, the theme for today. And I think I'll pass the mic around so you can introduce yourselves.
عالية الهاشم. I'm assistant professor at Qابوس University. My PhD thesis was about urban building energy and urban building energy modeling, and that's why I got really involved in smart cities and in the urban area.
Assalamu alaikum wa barakatuh. Leyla al-Hadhrami. I have almost now experience of 17 to 18 years. Don't ask me how old I am. But I started my career in Sultan Qابوس University for 6 years. At that time, I was in one of the departments that started talking about the technology. I said, okay, let me join this department so I can start even my master. And I started my master online learning. And Professor was asking me, what was your specialization? I said, I started my online learning at that time in 2006. And in 2006, at that time, even the virtual platform that today you hear about in the metaverse, we started at that time, imagine 2006. So my life started with technology since long time ago, and then I joined Information Technology Authority, known as ITA. ITA was leading Oman to be able to make things in Oman. So again, I was close from the electronic services so on when I joined my next career. Then I started with the smart cities in 2017, and everyone was asking me what the smart cities are myself. I didn't know what is really smart cities. So every time I was just, going around asking myself, what's really smart cities? Asking people, what's really smart cities? And since 2017 until today, I'm working in smart cities, and recently I moved from the government to the private sector, leading the first smart city development department in Oman. And I feel so much excited about it because every day I'm really learning about it. I'm not going to tell you about now what's the smart city because I'm sure we are going to talk about it the next.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Diana Bowman. I'm an assistant dean and professor at Oregon State University. Sorry, I need to be louder, apparently. I just wanted to say, to start off with, it is such a delight to be here. I feel very honoured to sit on the stage with this incredible group of women. This is my first trip to Oman. I arrived yesterday morning, and I cannot tell you how welcome and overwhelmed I am in terms of the enthusiasm, the energy, and what a beautiful city Muscat is, and what an amazing country to live in. So it's such an honour and privilege to be here. My background is in law and science, and I have worked for the last 15 or 18 years, so don't calculate my age either on that one. Really in the governance of emerging technologies and public health law. I've lived and worked in Australia, Belgium, the United Kingdom, South Africa, and Canada, more recently in the United States. And I came to smart cities, as many of us have, in a very convoluted way. When I was living in South Africa, I was trying to reduce the number of people who died on the roads in sub-Saharan Africa. And technology, autonomous vehicles, is a way to do so. So my framing in terms of smart cities is not so much about the technology, but how can we use the technology to improve quality of life. And it has been such an amazing journey, and we've heard already in terms of what is a smart city, how do you get to that endpoint. And I'm really excited about the discussion that we're going to have today, so thank you.
Thank you for that. I think the way I'd like to time the session now is we have a 45 minutes, let's say, panel discussion, and then we open the floor to questions and so on. And we can play, depending on how long we're taking. I'm just going to start off with keeping the question quite simple, and I think then we can get into the details of it. And maybe Professor Diana, I'll start with you. What does smart city really mean to you? How would you best describe it? And what do you think is the first thing you need to do in order to really achieve or think about achieving a smart city?
That is a fantastic question to start off with, and it might sound very simple to everybody here in the room, but I think it's probably the most complicated question you can ask us. One of the jokes we have in terms of my colleagues is if you put 10 people in a room and ask them what a smart city is, you're going to get 15 different answers. Because nobody can tell you what it is, nobody can actually agree on, but I do think there's some characteristics that we can draw upon. More and more, there's two schools of camp here. One way you hear the term smart city all the time, and it is a buzzword often, and it's a great way to get funding and attention and get people excited. You then have the second camp of people who generally try and avoid the term smart city because of the risk of overselling or the hype. I fall somewhere in between. I think it's a very useful term in terms of sometimes putting a concept forward, but to me, the smart isn't the important part. And also, sometimes I wonder if we're using smart city, does that imply that everything's up to date and done? And so it can be really challenging in that way too. So framing is really important. When I think about smart city, I actually don't think so much about the technology. To me, the technology is a means to the end. My framing is really what are we trying to achieve, and I use that quality of life as my end point. So how do we improve quality of life for everybody in that city? Now that has very different meanings to very different people. That could be around transportation and making sure that your commute is faster, which then has climate benefit. It could be around resilience of water supply, air quality. So there's fundamentals I think we can all agree on that make a smart city smart, but I do think it's very hard to actually get a very precise definition mentioned that everybody will agree with. What I do know is that we are driving in an era of smart cities about building more resilient and more sustainable cities. And if resilience and sustainability are at the core of a smart city, then I think we've got something that's going in the right direction.
It's really important, as you said, there is a lot of definition when it comes to the smart cities. So when it comes to the smart cities, you cannot give just one definition. Everyone, they will define it in their own way. Is it about technology perspective, the urban planning, the other factors and so on. So, it's almost like a journey for me to understand what is really the smart city. And sometimes when we say smart city, people they say, do we have stupid cities? So sometimes they say, okay, let's just use another term, for example, sustainable cities. Sustainable communities. This is my favorite term now to use because sometimes people think that you're angry to use the term smart. And I'm always telling them, the smart cities is not the cities in the moon, in the Mars. It is our cities because the concept of smart cities started, in the last century. Why it started? It started because some of the cities, they call them mega cities, the cities that have a huge population with more than 10 million population in that city. So imagine a huge population in that city. Definitely you're going to find a lot of challenges. What kind of challenge that we're going to have? Not feeling secure, pollution, unemployment, and you name it, And these kind of challenges, it started to be common around the world. So that's why, the term of smart city started. So they can invent the technology, so it can solve some of these challenges. Some of these challenges related to the urban planning, for example, if you are going to use, the best practices to design the urban planning, how we can inject the technology in the urban planning. Nowadays, most of the cities that they are becoming smarter, they are using, for example, the virtual reality, the mixed technology, so they can use it part of the urban planning. So it's about our city, and Professor Rihanna said it, it's about improving the quality of life. We as humanists in the past, we used to travel to the capital, Muscat. Why? Because all the services are in Muscat, right? But nowadays, we have 11 governments, which are part of the 124 vision. Now, our vision is that every government to be independent. We don't want people from the other governments to travel to Muscat again so they can get jobs. We need them to have jobs. We need them to feel stable, safe, and the most important thing, happy. Am I happy in that city? So this is the smartness about we as citizens feeling happy and stable and safe in our own countries. Because sometimes ask yourself, am I going to live in this house or you say the neighborhood for the next coming 10 years? Or I'm thinking, for example, to move because of the pollution, because of the traffic. Because I know some people here in Muscat, sometimes, they say, I don't love my neighborhood. It's becoming more crowded, traffic. I have to drive, for example, 30 minutes, or let me say more than 1 hour, for example, to reach a nursery, to reach the schools of my kids, to reach my work and so on. So we have now to design our cities to be, comfortable for all of us. This is, the best invention that I can feel it. For us, it's about how we can make citizens live longer. We have to make people live longer for the next 30 to 50 years, not moving from the next 5 years.
So if I summarize it for me, a smart city. Okay, so for me, a smart city is not about how much technology we have. It's not about the amount. It's how we utilize this technology. So if you utilize this technology to optimize the city functioning, if you utilize it for economic growth, if you utilize it to better the quality of life, then it's a smart city. So it's not about how much you have, it's how you use it.
Thank you. There are many questions that rise from this, but maybe, Leyla, I start with you. I like what you said there. You said that smart cities is a buzzword, and because it's suddenly becoming a buzzword, not a lot of people appreciate using this terminology. Do you think smart city is the the best solution, let's say, to achieve sustainability? Do you think that's the best way forward, or what different components, let's say, of sustainability would you say we have to focus on?
Thank you so much for asking that question, because it's one of the questions that I always asked about it. For example, here in Oman, every time when they say why we need the smart city, we say the sustainable city. Why we really need it? Because I always say we don't want people to move from here. So how can we really achieve that one? I'm always giving examples of my hometown, Israel, for example. Because when it comes to the designing every city, we have to protect the identity of the city. Because for example, today Israel, it has a beautiful roads, streets, and lights, but we have forgotten something important. Do you know what is the people of Israel are famous with? Can anyone tell me? They write something. Yes, the bikes. People of Israel, they are very much famous about riding the bikes. So we have designed Israel to be a modern city, but we have forgotten the most element. You cannot say that we are going to be modern and smart and so on. You have to create that city based on the culture and the people. Because Israel city is very much historical, and it has the souk, which is very traditional. It's the life of all the people in Israel, not just the old people, even the kids, in Israel. For them, the entertainment in the weekend to go to the souk. They don't love to use the cars because it will take longer, so they prefer riding the bikes. So we forget to design a path for the people who are using the bikes. And what happens? We are losing the lives of people. In our cities, we don't want to lose the lives of people. So we have to make sure that we are going to protect also the lives of the people. We are making our cities smarter for the people themselves. We don't want just to say, I'm going to design it because I have seen a best practice, for example, in Europe and the Middle East and so on. We have to make sure that we are going just to improve the quality of life for the people in that city, so we can protect the NDA, the identity. So we have just to bring all the dots connected. So it's about, how we're gonna, for example, as urban planning, plan very well for the people of Israel. How we are going with the technology so we can overcome the other challenges, whether it's the urbanization, the pollution, and so on. So it's about a mix of factors, and then we can have some indicators to assess ourselves. Have we succeeded in that one or not?
I think just in relation to what Leyla was mentioning, Professor Diana, and I think Dr. Aliyah as well, I'll ask you this question. So the University of Arizona has set up a Center for Smart Cities, right? And we had many discussions about sustainability and resiliency and so on. Why do you think, let's say, a leading university like the University of Arizona has set up a center like that? Why focus so much energy and time on sustainability and smart cities? Leyla explained this in the case of Israel and what it means from a people's perspective, but I really want to know what benefits will it also have for the economy in general. Many times decision makers think about smart cities or sustainability and so on as a trend that they want to be a part of, rather than the benefits that this could really have on an economy or on people and so on. So,
so if we understand about how the ecology of the smart city works, we have to understand that we have participants. Participants have information, like they're linked to devices, and hence they have information, abundance of information that is going out there. So for a smart city, we need to have a way to analyze this information, put it into context in real time, so that the government is able to make informed decisions that will in turn affect the citizens. So it's basically not, everybody's involved in the system. So the way that, for example, we work in education, for example, in engineering college, way that we focus on, or the part that we focus on, is what type of analysis, what type of real-time data we can use to make better informed decisions. So this link is what we mostly try to work on. And this link is something that impacts both the citizen and the government. It impacts the citizen because, of course, every decision will impact their daily lives. And the government to make a better decision for a better city that will improve not only the economic growth, but also the quality of life for the citizens.
So I'm going to answer your question with a little bit of a story. So I've been at Arizona State University since 2015, and that's when, around 2015, 2016, was when our big funding agencies in the United States, the National Science Foundation in particular, started to get excited about smart cities with the software. And every big call that was coming out at NSF had smart cities somewhere in it. And now, in the very technical fields, in these calls, you need a social scientist. It's one of the requirements with NSF to balance out the technical. And so every day, my colleagues from engineering kept like, hey Di, do you want to be on this like $100 million proposal around smart concrete? Hey Di, do you want to be on this or that? And it's really good to be the token scientist or social scientist in the university. And what I realized is that ASU was doing a lot of work on smart cities, but it wasn't being called smart cities. It was engineering, it was ICT, it was social science. And what I realized at the same time is we had a lot of individuals from local government as well as the private sector coming to ASU to partner. Now, ASU is a $4.5 billion business. We have 85,000 students and 3,400 faculty, give or take. That number is probably completely wrong. We probably didn't hire another 200. There was nobody coordinating what smart city effort was going on. And we were talking literally hundreds of millions of dollars worth of research and hundreds if not thousands of students and faculty working on these projects. So my colleague and I decided that we put a proposal to create a smart city region. Anybody in the university can appreciate, and those who are in the industry can appreciate bureaucracy. Normally it takes 6 months at ASU to actually get a center up and running. I wrote the proposal on a flight to Washington DC and finished it off at 6 a.m. in the morning at my hotel. I actually had it signed by the president of the university and the provost and up and running in 10 days, which was a signal to me that this was something that we definitely needed, and it was just right. Interestingly enough, when we first started this, some of my colleagues in engineering actually pushed back and said, why should we have a professor of law being a co-director for a center of smart cities? And my argument was this: we had the technical skills, we knew what to do in engineering and ICT and planning. What we didn't really know was how to do the governance. We didn't know how to do system engagement. We didn't know how to do the communication. So I was a legitimate person to co-direct, and I co-directed to other people who have the technical skills. As soon as we launched the centre, I had every mayor, the governor, and governors from outside our state coming to me to ask what we were doing in this space. How can we, as a university, help the public sector in terms of their programs of work? One of the things I'm really proud of, and we are the first university in the United States to have a centre on smart cities, is we see a lot of failure in the smart city space. Part of the reason is we have technology companies who come to government and say, this is what you need. There's no evaluation whether it is or not. It's a really good sales pitch, and so the government will go down. And I look at Sidewalk Labs in Toronto, if anybody knows that it's not city pilot, that was a $1 billion failure. Because Sidewalk Labs went to the city of Toronto and said, this is what you need. Toronto didn't know if they needed it or not. And so part of our role at the university is to help with real-time evaluation of pilots, but also do an analysis if this is the best solution, and flipping it. What is the problem that the public sector and indeed the private sector might be trying to achieve? And then how can I use my colleagues, my students who want to actually be involved in real-world problem solving to help not only co-design what that solution may look like, but ensure that whatever we are putting up as a solution is actually the best option. And that is something we've failed to see in the smart city space in terms of that level of evaluation, rather than is this a good or is this bad. Cost effectiveness is actually a really key component here, and that just has not been done largely as this type of programs of work have rolled out.
That's really interesting, and congratulations, by the way, on such achievement. It's a really important question because every time we are hearing about the digital economy, and they say how we can really achieve that because it's also part of the 2040 vision. So when it comes to the digital economy, are we achieving that to be part of the smart cities or to say the sustainable cities? Let me give you some examples. For example, sometimes I say we are blessed with COVID-19 because it has accelerated some of the process. For example, some cities in Oman, we start with Al-Hamra city. Al-Hamra city is also one of the historic and the old cities here in Oman. They have mud houses. What happened in Al-Hamra city? Some pioneers, and I say some pioneers, they're like the heroes who started, such movement in Oman. They decided to reinvent the mud houses to be, hostels and something like inns, hotels, and so on. That was, at the beginning, so much difficult and challenging. It was not an easy job. And you can mention about the governance. And I will speak about the governance also. Because sometimes people, they are asking me that question, who should lead the smart city vision in Oman? Or let me say in any country. I will come later on about that. So I already mentioned about Al-Hamra. As soon as the first, person started to reinvent that mud house, what happened next? Another house, a third one, all the city. It's becoming now a buzz, Now all the other cities in Oman, they are trying to have the same vision like Al-Hamra. How that helped the people in Al-Hamra? It created jobs for the people in Al-Hamra. They now are opening, coffee shops, cafes, restaurants, even the women. So all the community, they got income. So this is, when we say about, the digital economy, because you have secured some jobs. Because, in the past, the smart city, it was for the mega cities. Nowadays, it is for everyone, even the small cities. So this is how we are really creating opportunities. Let me give you another example. This week, I was, driving in our neighborhood, and I noticed that we have 2 mosques, and there was only almost 5 minutes walking. And I said, I know that one of these mosques is not used like the other one. So why we should have 2 mosques? Why we not, utilize the existing infrastructure? Because sometimes the smartness you have to utilize the existing infrastructure. For example, the women in our neighborhood, they go to the other community, for example, for Quran lessons. My mom, my her friends, they drive. Okay, why not utilizing the existing infrastructure? Why, for example, not turning that infrastructure for a nursery so mothers cannot drive? Because I know a lot of mothers, they suffer a lot sometimes just to find a nursery. And sometimes they drive for 30 minutes. How many moms they drive sometimes to take their kids to the nursery? Anyone heard? So I know this is really challenging. This is challenging. So we should, use the existing infrastructure. Another challenge, the kids. You find the kids a lot, where are they playing? In front of the house. Because we don't have players. Okay, why at least, the students to love their school, to go back and play there. So we have also to utilize, the existing infrastructure so we can create opportunities for the existing community. This is how we also going to have our own smart community. And this is cannot succeed without the governance. Because the governance is one of the most important elements. Because I got that question every time. Who should we lead, the smart city? Is it the urban planning team? Is it the Ministry of Transportation and IT? Is it, the Ministry of, Economy and so on? It's about integration of all these sectors together. So they can, because if you are going to, for example, utilize the existing infrastructure, we need to change policies, regulation, so we can make the life also for the people who are going to work as a startup and so on easier. So this is how we're going to do with the integration of all the sectors in the country.
Leyla, I'd just like to add to what you were saying. Now I talk on behalf of my ministry, the Ministry of Housing and Urban Planning. We have the Vision 2040, we we have the national and regional spatial strategy for every governorate, which is in essence a roadmap to achieving the vision. And what we realized with the new government and urban planning becoming a key sector within this ministry, but also within the cabinet right now in Oman, what we realized is urban planning, or even the theme of smart cities and sustainability, touches up on so many different sectors or disciplines. Suddenly we as an entity have to talk to the Ministry of Transport if they're looking at public transportation, or even putting up a metro, including muwasalat. Suddenly we need to talk to an authority of environment. We need to talk to key decision makers in the country, because certain decisions need to be taken with a lot of awareness, like you were saying. A lot of this data and analysis will help make more informed decisions rather than the other way around. So Oman is also heading in the direction of indirectly by virtue of having this urban planning, and like you mentioned, the Ministry of Technology and so on, starting to emerge and work on this theme of sustainability, urban planning, smart cities, and so on. The question really is, what do you think, maybe from your experience in Oman, and maybe Professor Diana, you know a little bit of Oman now, and you're getting to know a lot more, but also from your experience from abroad, what do you think are the key decisions that decision makers in the government need to make so that they are informed and their cities are really going in the direction of, let's say, smarter cities or more sustainable cities, or the urban planning is happening in an integrated manner? I'll just give you a little bit of context on that. As a ministry, we've been holding a lot of focus group meetings. Some of the young students that we have over here, they were a part of a focus group that we had with the youth. And one of the most important focus group meetings we had was with mothers. And we noticed that mothers, because they happen to be mothers, there is another life in which their minds and their hearts are fully occupied by that other life. They have the possibility and the capacity of thinking years and generations ahead. And we were in the end, we were concluding, and we were having a discussion on, okay, so as the Ministry of Housing and Urban Planning, what do you think we need in our cities in order for us to really be successful or meet the objectives that we all have? Because in Oman right now we have a wish list of what we want in every city. We want the Hamra to be in every other city. We want these local enterprises to really come up and to benefit, and the economy to prosper and so on. And they said one word which for us was very interesting. They said they want the cities to be lovable. And in the principles of planning or sustainability or smart cities, we hear about sustainability. We hear about public transport. We hear about IT and GIS-based softwares. We hear about indicators and KPIs and evaluation metrics. But we heard the mothers say lovable. So if you were to advise, let's say, key decision makers, what would be the key advice you would give in terms of really having informed governments and governance? And if you would share with us your experience abroad.
Okay, so if we try to understand how to implement the city, or basically evaluate if our city is smart or not, or at what extent it is, we need to understand the layers. Firstly, we have a physical layer, the building, the urban structure, the physical layer. Over that, we have the technological layer, where you have the sensors, the smartphones, and everything connected to each other. Then you have the specific, application. How do you use this technology or the raw data that you get from this technology to a specific application? Over that, on the top of this layer is the usage. How do you use all this information that you got in a proper manner? So if a city comes in, or for example, a government comes in to evaluate where do they exactly stand in terms of smartness, they need to first of all check their technology, how much it is connected, if they have the proper strength of the technology, high-speed internet provided. So that's the basic. Then we talked about the second layer, which is the application. Now, how many number, or what is the number of applications we have? Mobility application, usage application, network application. What type of application do we have? And the number of applications and their strength is also, and the extent of their use is what defines the second layer. Then comes the final layer, which is the usage. Now, the usage is upon the participant or the citizen. And it would never happen without awareness. So this is another enabler that we need to understand, is how do we enable the citizens? How do we make them aware to use this information that they're having in a proper manner that leads to satisfaction in terms of their job, in terms of their lifestyle. So this is the layers that the government needs to understand and evaluate each layer where they are, so that they understand where they want to go next and where they can improve upon next.
Thank you so much for getting back to that one. And let me share with you, one of the important things, because when it comes to the wish list, as you say, there's a long wish list, but what's really the reality? I have been working almost like 10 years in the National Digital Transformation Project, and have been working with more than 60 to 70 government bodies. Everyone, they want to succeed. But it's always about human integration, because, for example, the urban planning team, they might be able to change some policies, but these policies will be related at the end of the story to another organization, another organization, another organization. So definitely, we're going to need a national, strategy, for example, for the smart cities, or let me say sustainable communities, so we can be able to change some of these policies and regulations. I'm always saying, the law and the policies is not a holy book. We can change it. So, and one organization cannot do it. I know that, there's so much problem what's really happening around the urban planning team, and consider activities. I can see the engagement, the people, the citizens, but that's not enough. As we say, one hand we don't clap, so we have to do it at, a national level and so on. And the most important thing is the empowerment of people. It's not about the technology. I'm always telling people, although I'm not, by the way, working with technology, but I'm always telling them, technology is becoming at the end. As Dr. Ali said, the layer of technology is there, but the most important thing is about empowering people. This is how, for example, South Korea, they succeed. They just invested in people. We should invest with more people, for example. The person who started, for example, the vision of Alhambra to transfer it, we should bring that one to be possible in other cities. We need to empower people. It's about how we are going to empower people. Because what's really happening now, we have a lot of people are mentors and supervisors. We don't have a lot of people in the execution level. So this is what we really need. We need to train mostly the people in the execution level, so they can be able to lead their projects. Because sometimes people are coming to me and they say, we don't know how to do it. We got some orders to do this, but we don't know how to do it. It's easy to say, let's do this. We have a wish list, but how we are going to do it? So this is why we need, for me it's really priority, that we need to invest in the people, empower them, and bring real pastors who are really successful to lead great projects in Oman, so we can make them the ambassadors to train the others how to do it correctly, definitely with a national strategy.
So first I'd like to congratulate the Ministry and the urban planning team in particular in terms of the level of coordination that we have going. What I've seen in my time here is this is not a one unit initiative. You are reaching across the aisles of the ministries. And I reflect on my own experiences. We have 23 different colleges at Arizona State University. On any day, I'm working with 15 of them. I am literally the most annoying person at ASU, and I think anytime anybody sees my name pop up in my inbox, they're like, oh God, not here again. But the only way to do this right is to work across and collaborate. And it's not just even on a horizontal, it's a vertical. And so it's so exciting, and again, I congratulate the urban planning team to have students in the room, because this is a problem, not just for today, but it's what does our city look like in 2040 in terms of your vision, but also beyond 2040. to be creative. We have to be thinking of the technologies that do not exist today and will not exist in 10 years' time, and we start to think about planning and take parking, which is probably wastewater, probably one of the least exciting when you think about it in a day life. But if we're moving to autonomous vehicles, even if it's 50% of the fleet, what does that mean in terms of land usage and parking? Do we need to allocate X percentage of land in a new development to parking if people are going to have autonomous vehicles that they share? And these are really big questions that we do not have the answers to, but you're having to make decisions today in terms of land allocation uses. So being creative, thinking about the future and drawing on the expertise and creativity across the aisle is crucial to that. And I have to say, I work at a university, I sit in one state of 50 states in the United States. If I had this level of coordination and cooperation within my new environment, like what I'm seeing here, oh my gosh. Literally means sitting at the excitement. Sorry. Everything's going on. You have an amazing space to draw from. And the fact that we're in this room and having this conversation, there's so much about what you're going to be able to achieve going forward.
Thank you. I feel a lot of pride. We've worked very hard as a mission strategy team, to keep this coordination and integration going. There was something very interesting that I heard all of you say. There was a recurring, let's say, word or term that kept going, or to read. Technology, in some cases, it's an enabler, if I can term that. But also technology is not the start or stop of achieving sustainability, which is another thing, if I can conclude. At the same time, the people, capacity building, empowering, we're trying to do exactly that over here. But I just want to put $1 million question on the table, unintended. What we hear very often is, in order to achieve sustainability, yes, the people, but that takes so long, until you build capacity. But the easy solution is that you invest in technology and start implementing this technology. But that's not always feasible. And trying to achieve or implement smart cities and sustainability means investing in so much technology that's not cheap. Is it really feasible? And that discussion somehow blurs out the decision making or the vision that you will have for the how, as you said. When we get to, okay, how are we going to achieve the vision, or how are we going to start implementing this vision strategy? It's these aspects that become very vague and gray, and then it's almost like nobody wants to touch them. So maybe I'll start with you, Leyla. We know that technology is a layer and is an important layer to achieving sustainability and so on. Is it really expensive or is it feasible?
It's a really great question because as I'm now working to sell the technology solutions, every time people they say, oh, the technology is really expensive, we don't want to go with technology. But we have to come back and say, but there's a value of using this technology. There's a return of investment. There is, improving the quality of life. I'm going to mention one just solution that I never realized that we need these technologies. But as soon as I started going deep on that technology, it's about, monitoring the pollution. I always hear about, the quality of life and so on, but I never went deep on that one. So as soon as we started, for example, searching for a new technology to bring it to a mind, the current scenario, how, for example, the stakeholders here in Oman or the concerned organization, how they are monitoring the air quality. They are using big reference stations so they can, do the calculation and the parameters. But I ask myself, we as citizens, are we really living in a clean city? Because sometimes you drive and you find there are some factors very close from you. Because sometimes some of the people, for example, they have asthma. And you know that most of the people around the world, they die first from the pollution disease. And we said, oh my goodness, Sometimes technology is really expensive, but to be honest with you, it's not expensive because the current registrations that they use, for example, in Oman, it's big, like a room. So you can, monitor the quality of air. And the technology is very small now that we bring it and cheaper. But sometimes about the mentalities. But sometimes people know we are fine. It's the same with the computer. The computer when it started was a big room. And today it is the mobile that we are having in our hands. So sometimes we as a people, something natural for us, we resist anything new. All of us in this room. It's not easy for us to use any new technology. So when it comes to the technology, it's not that much expensive. Because as I say, the technology that we put, for example, for the air quality, is cheaper than the old one that we used. And why we need it? It's our rights as human. Because now we are paying taxes, for example. In return, I deserve to live in a city that I can guarantee it is safe for me, for my kids, for the next generation. And I feel that way. Because now you cannot see the love. Because when it comes to the pollution, you don't see it. You will affect it immediately. And how can you, know that? Go to the hospitals. If you go, for example, to the Sultan hospital, the Royal, you'll find, because I met one of their, team, and they told me we once got, some cases from the same city, for example, because our cities are now growing and becoming very close for the industrial areas. So we have to have a dashboard because it's our lives. Before going outside your home, check that dashboard. Is it safe to live or not? Because sometimes it's very dusty. We in the Gulf countries, we have a lot of dust, deserts and so on. Sometimes really, I remember one of my aunts, she has 4 kids. Sometimes, she and 4 of her kids are admitted in the hospital because when it's dusty, they shouldn't go outside. And we don't know about that. That, for example, it's dusty, we should keep inside. We don't know about that, we are ignorant. So that's why we need now the technology, so we can have some consistency, so we can know if it's safe or not safe. So technology is no more becoming expensive like before. It's become, cheaper and reliable. And, it's going also to reduce the energy consumption. So we have at the end of the story to use this technology to improve the quality of life for us. It's not anymore luxury. And even now that all people, they started using the services in their mobiles. It's no more like before they say the mobile is a luxury. Even the old people now, they use the mobile so they can access so many services. So this is what I can say about it.
I'll answer this question in several ways. This is a joking and academic, it's your prerogative to answer however you like. So I live in Phoenix, Arizona. It is summer in Phoenix at the moment, which means that I was checking my phone today, it's 47 degrees Celsius there. Last year we had over 100 days where it did not get below 42. So if anybody wants to apologise to me for how hot it is here, don't worry about it, I got you. We had 100 days where it did not get below 37 degrees at night. So we are a heat island in the middle of the desert. Now, one of the challenges that Frank and I'm sure you can all appreciate, that means people in the middle of the day do not want to walk around the city, which has a whole range of problems around obesity. Now, we as a city have just invested in 1 billion trees. Not a high-tech solution, but we know by planting a tree, we actually create urban heat environments whereby the temperature is actually increased by 3 or 4 degrees. And so the idea is actually to plant 1 billion trees to actually create canopies whereby people can walk around the city and actually enjoy the city for what it is. Now, there are a number of technical solutions that we can employ, and we are employing some of them. So there's some really high-tech coatings that you can actually pave footpaths with. They reflect the light and actually reduce the heat when you're walking on the footpath, and they do it on roofs as well. But a tree is a really simple solution that brings with it a whole myriad of other solutions associated with bringing back native species, with in terms of obviously carbon dioxide. So sometimes we have to look at both the technical solution but also potentially the low-tech solution. To go to cost, one of the things I find most challenging, and again this is why I compliment the ministry in terms of reaching across the other ministries, is that I will go down to the city and guess what? Their roads department has just ripped up this road in order to replace the sewerage line or something else. And the ministry or department next door decides that they need to ISO become the road in order to put their cable down. And 6 months later, another department decides that they need to become the road for another reason. Now, the cost of each exercise is actually significant and actually then discourages a high-tech, futuristic option being employed. But if they actually got together and talked about what do they need in the next 5, 10, 15 years and actually coordinated their strategy, they could put the high-tech solution in one row and actually save a lot of money. So part of the issue is the lack of coordination. My third point is around how we even talk about the technology, and I think our framing here is really important. So there are some solutions, and I work obviously on road safety, so autonomous vehicles. We know, for example, globally, that 92% of all fatalities are associated with human error. More than 50% of those are associated with either speed or driving or having drugs on board. Now, you take the person out of the driver's seat to actually reduce the number of fatalities. That has huge economic benefits when you think about what the burden of injury in terms of a fatality, a serious injury, what that does to a family. And so we know a catastrophic serious injury, for example, in Australia will cost between $10 and $20 million over the life of the care for that person. So when we talk about the cost of some of these solutions, we can't just talk about the cost of what it is today, but what will that save by actually utilizing that technology? And I think solar is another important technology where, yes, solar panels are expensive. Actually, they're not that expensive and not part of the traditional application. But what is the return on investment over 5, 10, 20 years? And if we do that in terms of a combination with my point 2 across different sectors, then these technologies expensive today actually are a lot cheaper than conventional technologies if played out over a 20-year period.
I'll just talk about the technology. So there are two important things about smart city. So the two backbones of the digital city is availability of information or access to information to the citizen, and the second is the data management. How do you manage the data? One example that I give you from my personal experiment that we did, what we did, we wanted to find out, like it was a research funding that we wanted to find out the island rules in some parts of the city, and we wanted to get like a software, a simulating software, which was extremely expensive, so we ended up attaching a drone to a thermal camera and running the drone, and through this, because the drone always captures the latitude and the longitude and the azimuth location of every picture, we attached it to the thermal imaging of every picture, and we were able to generate a 3D model of the thermal imaging. And hence we found out the urban heat islands in a city. So not necessarily all technology is expensive. It's about what you utilize, what resources you utilize to get the information you need. So you have to understand what information you need before you think what it doesn't always have to be.
Let me give you another example when it comes to the implementation of the technology, and as I say, it's about the return of investment. There is one project that we have implemented as a proof of concept in Al-Ansar. Al-Ansar is, a small area here in Muscat, the capital. So we, the issue of the leakage of the water. How many times you drive and you see the leakage of the water on the street, you call the emergency of the water police, come and fix it and so on. And sometimes they say, okay, you need to call the other number and so on. It happens everywhere, I'm sure that. So we, the idea what we want to bring this technology, we call it mineral area water management. So it's about detection of the leakage underground. Because what we have losing the underground, the water is more than what you see in the surface. So we have put some sensors, So this is one of the solutions that we are working on it. And we did some of our calculations. So imagine just a little subsidy here in Muscat. You know how much we are going to save to implement this solution for 1 year? Almost 1 million area. That is almost like around 3 million maybe US dollars, something like that. So that is, you can see the return of investment. So when it comes to technology, people sometimes think about just buying the technology, but they do not think about the return on investment. So now everyone now, so if we are going to implement this technology everywhere, and we are using, this natural resource everywhere. It's not just, about the water. We can use it for the other, resources like the gas, the oil, and fuel pipes, so we can use it a lot and so on. So the technology, when it comes to the return on investment, this is, the beauty of technology. It's going to save energy and consumption and definitely the cost. I just wanted to share this one.
I'm going to ask one last question before I open the floor for any questions you would have, so please be prepared. The last question. Leyla, we were in a smart city workshop together that we arranged through our ministry for the spatial strategy of Muscat specifically. And it was, the first start was Muscat, and then we planned to go into every governorate. And if you remember, the last question we were all asked, we were around 30 participants, was what is your favorite city or your benchmark city? In terms of smart cities, in terms of sustainability, but also in terms of livability. And if you remember, of us voted for Muscat. We had Barcelona, we had London, we had Copenhagen, we had Dubai, we had so many different cities, but majority of us voted for Muscat, including you and I remember this very well. So I'm going to keep the question very short and simple. If you would urgently recommend one smart city solution or sustainability solution that Oman and specifically Muscat needs to focus on trying to implement right now, what would it be?
It's a very hard question to answer. You make it difficult for me.
It's for my benefit.
I always say, if we are going to create our smart cities, it is for people. So we have to make sure that all the services that we as citizens, it is there for us. For example, we have to think about the utilities, the smart utilities. Do we have all smart meters, for example, in front of our homes? Can we pay our bills without, complaining that this is not my bill? We did that a lot, for example. For example, till today, we don't have the gas infrastructure in Muscat. Honestly, this is one of the things that I really need to see as soon as possible, because the utilities is the first services that we as citizens we need. I don't want to get everything, whenever, for example, I don't have water, shortage of water, I have to call the supplier, please come bring the water. We used to have that in the past. Nowadays, it's about the gas. We have to call the distributor. As soon as the gas is no more there, we are not able to continue with our cooking. So definitely, I put, the utilities as first priority. And sometimes people are coming to me, for example, from other areas outside Muscat and say, you see, we don't have the smart utilities, for example, when it comes to the water and energy. So, but the good news is that Oman is planning by 2025 to be fully automated when it comes to the smart meters. And I hope that we're going to have all of these utilities to be automated and smart, because it's our rights as citizens to get these services.
I'll answer this question more generally, and I've been in 24 hours. So I think one of the biggest problems we have, or two problems that we have, and it's going to be a challenge to solve, but I think we have people in the room to do that. Citizen engagement, I think, is a key challenge, and part of that comes down to capacity within citizens. Like, you're using a smartphone, it's great to have a smartphone or a computer, and it's great to have government services that you can do online and that you can watch meetings online and deal with government officials. But if you haven't given the population the tools to actually actively engage with that smartphone and utilize those apps to their full potential, then you probably haven't realized your smart city dream. So citizen engagement. And I think the other part is the capacity building, and that is both the citizens that they just referenced, but also the people in power making the decisions. I see it every day that I go into a city manager's office, and they're dealing with the potholes and the day-to-day challenges of running a city. Do they have time to learn about what blockchain is and how blockchain may actually empower their delivery? No. So it's about identifying the people who are going to be the decision makers today and tomorrow, and make sure that they've got both the training but also the networks, so that they, when they're making decisions about that roadway,
is making the real-time data available to people. Now, this real-time data can be anything. Can be the traffic of the roads real-time, and can be energy usage in buildings, can be energy usage in an urban or a neighborhood city that can be monitored by entities. So, availability of real-time data would be the first step for making people more aware. Because if they make decisions based on this available real-time data, they would realize that their lives or their decisions that they make upon that is getting better. So their decisions, their time gets saved, their energy gets saved, their money gets saved, their daily routine becomes much more efficient. So this access, if provided, I think people will automatically start getting aware about it and how it impacts.
Thank you. We're going to start with questions now. Any questions? No questions?
Question for Professor Diana. So you've been to and you've lived in a lot of countries around the world. So my question is, which country do you think has a very strong smart city program or smart city initiative?
That is it. Do you hear me without the microphone?
I think they need it for the recording, sorry.
Of course, you have to ask the toughest question first. So it's a really hard question to answer because it comes down to what are your values in terms of how you define what is the best smart city. I think we definitely have some cities that we can draw examples from, and I think of Copenhagen as one of the first in terms of they're taking a really holistic approach to their planning. And what I really love about Copenhagen is the person with ability is at the very center of their decision making. I think we've already talked about Barcelona as another example, and again, there's great examples. But I tend to shy away in terms of like who is the gold star in terms of the smart city, because it just depends on what you want to implement in terms of for your citizen. Where I think the best lessons come from are actually the values. And let me show you, I think the smart city cloud by the time there's probably more failures than there are successes at this point in time. And I think we're still a ways from seeing a truly smart city, how it all envisages. I referenced Toronto and Sidewalk Labs, which is a great example of failure, because this was literally a private sector really imposing its vision on a city which there was no stakeholder engagement with. There was no asking what these citizens wanted. And we literally saw a 10-year investment, and as I mentioned, a multi-billion-dollar investment fail. We've seen that time and time again, and what we do see in terms of those successes is when all of the relevant stakeholders come to the table where what their vision in terms of their life and their livability is actually on the table, and you work backwards in terms of what it is your people want. So again, I think there are some great examples out there, but I would never suggest to anybody, oh, you should just take the Copenhagen model and apply it to your own city, because it's never going to work. Maybe 50 to 60% of what they've done is relevant to other cities, but you always have to adjust in terms of the local context.
Other questions? Just while passes the mic to say that the ministry is an urban observatory, and Zainab is the one who's leading that, so she's our superpower in this department.
Thank you. I just want to ask a question about, I want to add that I believe that smart cities is not only about technology, it's more than that. And we prepare in terms of, sustainability and livability more than smart cities. But I want to ask that how we can measure smart cities? What is the indicators for the smart cities? They have been asking us about that and these indicators and how we can measure these cities.
that's a really rich question, and it's something that my team has been working on for about 2 years. So we created a smart region in the Greater Phoenix area, which brings 22 cities and towns together across Maricopa County. And the idea with doing that is we wanted to solve regional problems, which means we needed to actually be able to measure some of those. And so what we have taken is we've taken the Sustainable Development Goals and broken them out, and then we've matched them to ISO standards. And we literally have 146 measures that we think are important for a smart city. And that's a lot of them around health and safety, around environment, around resilience. And so even with things like miles traveled, because we know obviously the impact of the car in terms of climate. And so we are now in the process of then working out, and this is where data comes into it, what data sources do we have to feed into that dashboard? What are the top 20 metrics realistically? We cannot do 146 in one go. But if we're talking about livability, things to the point earlier about air pollution, that's a really important measure for us. Water consumption is a really important measure. Use of energy, so electricity, is a really important measure, and that then the solutions that we're deploying on the ground. So we've been working with the city of Scottsdale on the 22. We have a lot of golf courses in Scottsdale. It makes no sense to me, I'm really not a golfer. And they use a lot of water, and so the city of Scottsdale really struggled with how do they bring down their water consumption. So we did a project with the cloud innovation team through AWS, and they have actually been able to decrease their water consumption in public areas by 40%, which is a really powerful indicator when you're in a desert. And so it's taken a lot of time, and one of the things was it was not just me sitting in a room with 5 of my friends trying to work out what those indicators should be and how should they deploy. We actually went out, like I said, it did start as an academic exercise. We realized there was no utility. It was just me and my friends thinking this was a great idea. So then we went to the mayor, we went to the city manager, we went to the head of the climate change team, we went to the heat mitigation team to ensure especially that top 20, it was the right 20 indicators that we were measuring. Then let me assure you, there was a lot of internal debate, but I welcome that debate because if we just kind of all agree that it would not have been the top 20 measures. So that's what we're looking at. We're getting historical data, and that's another thing in terms of data. If you can pull in historical data and actually track trends, it makes that really much more powerful. And so we hope to be able to deploy this. And we've actually been working with one of the big standards organizations to do this, because we hope that maybe in the 10 years that we're going to spend on this can actually save some other groups some time. Again, to your point, it's not going to be perfect whatever we deploy. It's specifically for the Greater Phoenix area, but if it does mean another city can take 50% of what we've done and then provide our own other measurement metrics, maybe it'll save some time.
Thank you so much. Let me add something what you just have added, because when it comes to the smart city indicators, this is one of my favorite actually topics, because in 2019 I was working as a fellowship research, just particular smart city indicators with my colleagues in the United Nations EGAP office in Portugal. So we were just discussing that, what is the best indicators that we can use it so we can assess, for example, Oman. Should we use the same indicators that is, for example, the United Nations are using? Should we use, the indicators that, for example, the ITU are using? You're going to find a lot. To be honest with you, as soon as I started searching, I found there more than 20 metrics for indicators when it comes to the smart cities, sustainable communities. Then we realized that we in Oman, for example, the team who work in Oman 2040 Vision, they have done a very great job. If you go to the last page in Oman 2040 Vision, you will find them have set some indicators based on the SDGs, because we have 17 sustainable development goals. So based on that, and as I say, we in Oman, we have unique governance. Every governance is unique than the other governance. We can have some common. And one of the challenges that every time I go to some of the organizations, they will say, we need to be smarter. How can we be smarter? It's not about being smarter and getting that certificate, because everyone is curious about getting that certificate and so on. So we decided to create a roadmap for them. We call it innovation roadmap, because for me the smartness is really related also to the innovation, so we can make it sustainable and we it comes to the innovation, we say there is three main pillars that you need to take into consideration. The first pillar is about people. Who's your people in that organization? Because you are going to improve your services or create new services for your people. So you have to get your own smart ecosystem. And when I say the smart ecosystem, are they government? Are they from the private? Are they academia? Are they SMEs or startups? Or they are the community of that area? So you have to take into consideration all the different categories of that community in your organization. And then you come to the vision. What is your vision? How can you link it to 12040 vision? How can you link it to the SDGs? Because as I said, we have 17, we cannot link it to the 17. You have to be very much specific. Is it about education or the health or the housing service and so on? So which one of them? And then you set the questions or the criteria. You will be able then to assess yourself. And the third one is about the technology. We start with the smart infrastructure, then the technology, the smart solution, then finally the data. But sometimes people are coming to me and they say, we need AI. I say, AI will come at the end when you have a huge lake of data. So we have to make sure that we have a clear roadmap, and I love to call it innovation roadmap, so we can link it to all the pillars inside our organization.
For the performance indicator, and I will just try to split it. Now you have the performance indicator, whether or not the city is smart enough, and the performance indicator of the result or the impact it had on the environment and on health and on different sectors. So you first start with the layers that we were talking about, the technology layer. What is the strength of the technology you're providing? That is one indicator. Then would be the other layer of the application. What is the extent and the number of applications that we have on the data that we have gathered? Then you have the usage. How it is getting used. Are people aware of it? How they're using it? And then finally we have the impact of these indicators on the actual indicators. The impact on the economy, impact on the environment, impact on energy. So you can slice it up into these layers, or you can work on the resultant impact of the indicators that we're doing.
Thank you. Any more?
So when we refer to smart cities, it's always referred as technologies, but as individuals, how can we support the concept of smart cities as individuals?
I think first thing, as individuals, we should first start learning about it. And if we know about it, we as individuals, we should teach the others. Let me share with you the story of me with my father. Because you know what, I was working with the data transformation. As soon as we launched, the smart mobile of the Royal One Police, I told him, no need for you to go and pay the bills to the police station, Now you can do it online. So what I did, I was just teaching him how to use that one. But you know what happened at the end of the day? My brothers, they hate me. They say, who taught my father? Because he was just daily, he was just checking into the fight. Whenever he saw there's a fight, I'm going to take from your salary and so on. So it's about, the awareness. Because if we started teaching the people around us, individuals, the other individuals will start using that technology. Because sometimes we have technology, but people, they resist using that technology because they are really afraid of using that technology. And as I say, this is natural as human beings. So as a responsibility, all of us, we should be ambassadors to educate, to aware the others around us.
I absolutely agree with that. And what I would say, build on that, is storytelling is the most powerful way to actually teach people, rather than making it scary. And especially when we're talking about an engaged population, storytelling is a great way to engage everybody across the spectrum and making it far more accessible through stories. And sometimes I think we get scared in terms of that pushback from different generations or people who've may not have engaged in terms of technology. But if we can make it accessible, and if we can make it exciting, and I don't mean exciting about the technology per se, if we can make it exciting about the outcome and the application, it's a really powerful way to actually break down traditional boundaries.
So for me, if I break it down, you can play an active role in it. So whatever major or whatever work that you're doing, you can think about what are the things that can move into real-time data, how can that be transferred. That's one way. The other way is actually applying whatever information you're getting available, no matter how what digital technology is getting available to you, you use it to participate in it, so that the government would actually get real data. So they're kind of experimenting with it, and you participate actively. And the other way is, again, like they mentioned, teaching or educating the people around you about this technology, making them aware and making them less scared about this technology, and making it a habit for them to do.
Sorry, I get my expression being moved up. Also, be bold and be proud about what you're doing here. One of the things that we've discovered in terms of what we've been doing on the ground in Sweden, as soon as we actually told the rest of the world about it, a number of people who want to come and visit me, who want to be shown around, want to actually see what we're doing on the campuses, see what the Scottsdale building is doing. It's incredible. So not only have we brought the world's attention to what we're doing, we've also brought local attention. And let me assure you, at least in my experience, if you can say world leaders in X and Y are coming to your city or your country because they know what you're doing and you are a world leader, it's a great way to get everybody locally on board. So don't be afraid to sell what you're doing and tell the rest of the world and get people to come here. And this is a beautiful country and a beautiful city, and so show it off and actually embrace what you're doing here, and you'll get other people on board.
Thank you. I think with that, we close the session. If you do have any more questions you would like to ask, please feel free to contact us via our social media. You know what it is on Instagram, on Twitter, on the website, so on and so forth. Please read our spatial strategy. It's available on the website, and please feel free to reach out to us whenever. Thank you.